Good evening, guys. Good evening, everyone. So in the previous sessions, I covered like software development life cycle, testing life cycle, and performance testing at a high level, right? And as in the last session, I covered like goals of PT for an already existing application. Now let's see like what are the goals of performance testing for a newly built application. Means in what all cases we will do performance testing for a newly built application. Okay. Yeah. So this part we already covered in the last session. Okay. Now let's understand like what is the necessity of doing performance testing? What is the reason for doing performance testing for a newly built application, newly developed application? Okay. Yeah. So the first and foremost reason why we should do performance testing for a newly built application is assess readiness of production environment and determine the capacity of existing systems. So assess readiness of production environment means how ready the application is to go live, right? And determine the capacity of existing systems. That means what is the user load capacity of the application. So to determine that, to decide that, like we do performance testing. This is one of the reason for doing PT, right? PT means performance testing. So going forward, when I say PT, I'm referring to performance testing. So this is one of the reasons for doing performance testing for a newly built application. Clear, guys? To assess readiness of production environment and determine the capacity of existing application means how many users can that application support. That is the first one. The next one is compare performance characteristics with different system configurations. So, but different software configurations or hardware configurations. That is one more reason for doing performance testing, or that is one more scenario where we will do performance testing. If you want to compare the performance characteristics with the different system configurations. So I'll explain this in detail later on, like what is different system configuration and how does that affect the performance of an application. Okay. And the next reason is support system application and tuning. So these are the important ones which I have highlighted in a different color. These are the important ones. So however, like I will explain this also later on. It's too early to explain this now, right? And create benchmarks for future systems. That is another reason, to create a benchmark for future system. Okay. And compare multiple platforms. If you want to compare like how the application performs on different platforms. Okay. So when I say different platforms, it can be software platform or a hardware platform. Okay. So see, any application can be running on any operating system or any hardware, right? So it may be Intel processor or it may be AMD processor, or else it may be the operating system can be Windows operating system or Linux operating system or Mac OS. Again, in Linux also we have multiple flavors of Linux. There are multiple different operating systems or multiple flavors of Linux. So if you want to compare multiple platforms also, we do performance testing. So we'll revisit these terms again once the scripting is completed, right? So then we will revisit the term base. Okay. So I just want to give you an overview, like in what all scenarios we do performance testing. The next topic that I'm going to cover is what are the different types of performance testing, which is very important, right? Now, next reason is like validate the application against its performance criteria. Validate any application against its performance criteria, and the performance criteria can be in a different ways, like a different criteria will be there for different applications. Okay. So let's say, for example, so one of the performance criteria can be response time SLAs. The response times of all the pages should be, let's say, within 5 seconds. That is one performance criteria. Or else some other performance criteria can be something like this. So the application should support like see, I worked in one of the banking project wherein the requirement, our performance criteria is something like this. Our application should support 18,000 transactions per hour. Okay, 18,000 transactions per hour. Right. This is one of the performance criteria for that application. Clear, guys? So that banking application should support like these many transactions per hour. So this is one of the performance criteria. Able to follow, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
So to evaluate the application against the performance criteria is, so these can be one of the different performance criteria, right? And uncover what components of an application suffer poor performance and under what conditions. So before I speak on this, like I want to show you something called, so I think I have shown you typical web application architecture diagram. Yes or no? Any website key or any web application key, like what does, what are the components of that application I explained, right? If I remember it correctly explained, I have shown this diagram at least. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, you have shown the diagram.
So any website consists of the typical, this is the typical or traditional 3-tier architecture. And any website, for if you take any irctc.co.in or Redbus or HDFC net banking, right? So any of these applications, will typically have such kind of architecture. It will have a web server, app server, and database server. 1 second, guys. Let me take a pause. Okay, let's proceed, guys. Somehow is unable to join. Yeah. So any typical web application consists of these kind of architecture. It will have web server, app server, database server, and a load balancer in between. Okay. So these are the different components. Now, if there are some performance issues, see, for sometimes like you see high response times, or sometimes you see like 500 internal server error, right? Sometimes the site can't be reached, right? So the reason for, so that is called as a performance issue. If the site can't be reached, or if it is uh, if the proper page is not loading, right? Or if the response time is high, those are called as performance issues. Now, one reason for doing performance testing is to find out what components of a system suffer poor performance and under what conditions. When I say what components, so these are the different components of a web application. Okay. So web server is one component, app server is one component, and database server is one component, right? So if there are some performance issues, there can be issues with web server or app server or a database server. So if you want to find out like what components are giving poor performance, right? And under what conditions right? That is another scenario where we can do performance testing. Is it clear, guys? Did you understand this statement? Uncover what components of an application suffer poor performance and under what conditions. Is it understood, guys? Or no? Yes, am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please explain me once again.
So first of all, let's understand what is meant by component of an application. So if you consider, if you consider these are the components of a web application. So any web application, right, or any website, consists of these kind of architecture. Okay. So it consists of web server, application server, database server. Now, when you use any browser and send a request to any of the websites, right? Your request will first go to web server and then app server and database server. I am speaking in terms of websites only so that you will easily understand. Okay. So it can be a mobile application also, but I am speaking in terms of websites only because you can easily understand, right? So when you are accessing any application from the browser, right? So your request will first go to the web server and then it goes to app server. If required, it goes to app server. Again, if it needs to fetch some data, it will go to database server. Okay. And once the data is fetched from the database server, your application server will process the logic and it will send to presentation server. I already explained this with examples in the previous sessions, isn't it? Guys, yes or no? I already explained that when you search for some trains between two cities or buses between two cities, right? So that data will be stored in the database. And there will be some code, Java code or .NET code running on this application server, which will fetch the data from the database, right? So those who join new, right, ignore all these. For now, just understand that, please remember that any typical web application consists of this kind of architecture, and these are called as components of that web application. Components means, what is the general meaning of component? Yes, what is the general meaning of component? Simple question. I asked a simple question.
Any object or thing.
Any part of something, right? Part of something is called as a component, right?
Component.
So web server is one component, app server is one component, database server is one component, load balancer is one component for any web application. Understood or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All these servers make together our web application. Let's say if you take IRCTC or APSRTC or any website, flipkart.com or amazon.com, right? So they will contain these web servers, some servers called web server, app server, and database server. Is it clear? And each one is called as a component, and load balancer. So each one is called as a component of that application. Okay.
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 Yes, sir.
Now, if you want to, if there are some performance issues, if you are seeing site can't be displayed, or if your pages are breaking down, right? Or sometimes we see site can't be displayed, or sometimes we see 500 internal server error. Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Right? There can be issue with any of those components. The issue can be with the web server, or the issue can be with the app server, or the issue can be with database server.
Yes.
Right? So వీటిలో ఏది వర్క్ అయిపోయినా ప్రాపర్ గా వర్క్ అయిపోయినా you will not get a proper response, or you may not be getting a response from the server. Now to find out which component is causing that poor performance and all, we can do performance testing. That is one more reason, one more goal for doing performance testing for any application. Is it clear now?
Yes, yes, clear.
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
And find any performance bottlenecks or performance issues. See, so when you get any university results or intermediate results and all, right? You see, sometimes the pages will be accessible, sometimes the website will be down, sometimes it displays, it display a blank page, right? Or else it may display like site can't be displayed messages. Yes or no?
Yes,
You have
yes,
seen
sir.
those are
Yes,
called
sir.
as performance issues, right? Those
Yes.
are called as performance issues of the application or the website. Okay. So if to find out if there are any performance bottlenecks also, we do this performance testing.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Now let's see what are the different types of performance testing. We understood, this slide speaks about what are the reasons for doing performance testing for a newly built for an already existing application and for a newly built application. Now
Yes,
let's understand what are the different types of performance testing. Okay. So these are the different types of performance testing. So you can see here it starts with load testing, endurance testing, volume testing, scalability, spike testing, stress testing, right? All these together make performance testing. These are different types of performance testing. Okay. So you see that in our WhatsApp logo also, in my YouTube channel logo also, isn't it? The same logo is displayed in WhatsApp DP as well as my YouTube channel logo.
yes, yes.
So this logo or this picture, consists of different types of performance testing, starting with load testing, endurance testing, volume testing, scalability, spike testing, and stress testing. Right? Now let's understand what are these different types of testing. So the first one is load testing. The first one is load testing. Load testing is something which we do with expected or normal user load for 1 to 2 hours. Right? Load testing is a type of testing which we do with normal user load for 1 to 2 hours. Means if you are testing a website, right? So if you are doing load testing, if you have to do load testing for a website, you have to test with normal or expected user load, right? And who will tell this number? Your client will tell this number, like my target user load is some 5,000 or 10,000. Your client will tell that number. Okay. And you have to test the application with that user load for 1 to 2 hours. So that is called as load testing. And load testing is the first and foremost type of testing. Okay. So after doing load testing only, we will do other type of tests like soak test, stress test, and all this. Clear, guys?
Yes, yes, clear.
Right? The next type of testing is soak or endurance testing. So endurance means long duration or durable, right? General meaning of endurance is long durable. So here in here, SOAK or endurance test means long duration test. And how long it is depends on the application, depends on the business hours of the application. We'll discuss that in the next slide. What is meant by business hours? First, let me cover what are the different types of performance testing. Okay. And if you observe here, I have marked this one in a different colors because these two are important types of testing that every application should be subjected to. Any website or any mobile application is, so we have to do load testing and SOAK testing as mandatory thing. So that is why I have highlighted these two. Okay. Next type of testing is stress testing. So you don't need to do stress testing for all types of applications. Any websites ki stress testing awesome ledu. Only few applications require this stress testing. Now, what kind of applications require that? Okay. Suppose there is a travel application like APSRTC or TSRTC or KSRTC. There will be some during festival days or during summer holidays or vacation. There will be more number of users on those applications, right? Or IRCTC.
Yes, yes.
Right. So we have to test those applications. We have to do this stress testing also for those kind of applications.
Okay.
Understood, guys? So,
Understood.
so stress testing is something which we do with more than normal load on the application. Okay. Suppose let's say like the normal user load is 1 lakh and during festival days or vacation, let's say assume that there will be user load of 1,10,000 or 1,20,000. Now you have to verify whether that if there are additional number of users on the application, your application will support or not. So for that we do this stress testing
With unexpected load.
with more than expected load. Yes.
Yes. Yes, sir.
More than expected load or more than normal load on the application.
Yes.
Right. The next type of testing is spike testing. So spike testing is done for again, let's understand what are the different scenarios in which we do spike testing or what kind of applications we do spike testing. Right. So I gave some best examples over here. If you observe here, so whenever there is Tatkal sale, right, there will be Tatkal booking on website, on IRCTC website, right? You'll have a sudden surge in the user load. At what time, guys?
Morning 10,
Right.
morning 11.
10 and 11, right? So
Yes.
we have Tatkal window. Tatkal window will be opened once at 10 o'clock and then at 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
So there, at that time, there will be a sudden surge in the user loads. Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
More number of users will be accessing the application during that time. Agree?
Agree.
Right. So for those kind of applications, we have to do this spike testing as well. Okay. So we are discussing failover testing, right? So I'll explain this. We'll revisit this later, guys. Like once the scripting is completed, we will revisit this. These different types of testing. Okay. I just missed recording for a couple of minutes. Anyways, so failover testing. Let's understand this failover testing. So suppose if you have frequent power cuts in your area and you want to go for a power backup, isn't it? You'll go for a power backup. You'll buy an inverter and you'll get the technician to install the inverter, right? Now, so before you let him go, you will ask him to test it, or else before he leaves your home, he will test it, right? Whether how will he test it? Will he wait for the power cut? Will the technician wait, or you will wait for the power cut to verify if the inverter is working fine or not?
No, sir.
No, no.
No, right? So what do you do? If you want to, see, you simply switch off the main, right?
Yes.
Turn off the mains power and you see whether all the connections are working fine or not. All the all the electrical points that that were connected to inverter to the backup are working fine or not. Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Right. And once you verify that, what do you do? Again, you'll what next? Okay. So you found that like all the electrical points are getting power on inverter, power backup, right? Whatever connected to the power backup, they are working fine. What next? What will you do next? Then you will also main the power on, right? Mains power, you will turn on the mains power and then you will let him go, or else then he will leave your place. Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Right. So failover testing is something similar to that. Okay. Suppose you have a, like for any application, for whether it is online SBI.com or IRCTC or APSRTC, right? Or Flipkart or Amazon. So you'll have a main environment as well as a backup environment. Means you'll have all these servers in one place in one city in a main environment. Let me go to yeah. So you'll have all these kind of architecture in some city. For example, State Bank of India has its headquarters in Mumbai. So its main environment is also running on Mumbai servers located in Mumbai. Okay. Now they will also have a backup environment. Now, what is the purpose of backup environment? You remember, like few days last year, I think, like we had floods in Mumbai, and there
Yes,
are like power interruptions for around like 1 week to 10 days, isn't it?
yes,
But the business of SBI should continue, right?
yes,
So internet banking users should be able to do fund transfer and all this, isn't it?
yes,
They can't lose that business. Suppose like the main environment is down in Mumbai, the main servers are down in Mumbai. There should be some backup environment also, isn't it? Just like an inverter at our home, right? There should be some backup environment, right? So now, yes, every application, every website or every mobile application will have a backup environment as well. Now to test that whether like that backup environment is working fine or not, and once the main environment is up and running, whether the user load is redirected to main environment or not, right? So we do this testing called failover testing. Clear, guys? What is failover testing?
yes, yes,
Right? Power coda, we call that as a failover switch and failover switch are anyone have the terminology idea about that terminology? We have some Tribly background guys also, right?
yes,
Yeah. Right. So that is failover testing. So as we don't have it here, I'm explaining it. Okay. Now let's discuss in detail the different types of performance testing, and then we'll have a quick assessment. I'll show you some graphs, and you have to identify what type of graph is that. What does each graph represent? Okay. So let me quickly explain in detail the different types of testing. Very, very important questions for interviews guys. What are the different types of performance testing? And what are the different types that you executed in your project, right? These are one of the few important interview questions. So we'll go one by one. As we discussed already, the first type of testing is load testing, right? So load testing generally simulates current user load on the system. Means suppose your general ga oka application 5,000 users vadutunnaru anuko. We do load testing with that user load. That is called as expected user load or normal user load, current user load or normal user load, right? And we will be doing this load testing for usually 1 to 2 hours. Okay. And this is the first type of performance testing before doing any other type of testing. And load testing ensures that the application is stable and can handle expected peak load. This is to ensure that the application is stable, whatever website or mobile application that you are working testing. This load test ensures that the application is stable and can handle expected peak load. And this is the first and foremost type of testing. This is the mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type. Before doing any other performance test type, so load testing is done first. So you have to, in interviews also, you have to tell in the same sequence, by the way. And some people say like, when interviewers ask like, what are the different types of testing? This is test testing and spike testing and then load testing, right? Load testing is the first one, first and foremost type of performance testing. This is the mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type, right? The next type of testing, is it clear guys for load testing? What is
yes,
load
yes,
test?
clear.
What is a load test, right? The next type of testing is soak or endurance test. So what is this soak or endurance test? As I explained just now, so endurance test is conducted for longer duration based on business hours of the application. So we generally do endurance test for 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours, 1 day or 3 days. Now let's understand what is meant by business hours of the application. Okay. Let's understand what is meant by business hours of the application. So you might be using Amazon or Flipkart, right? So from which time to which time of a day you will be using this? You will not use it only at a particular time, isn't it?
Yes, yes,
right? So you may use it from morning 6 to night 10 or 11.
Yes.
It's or no, right? Or a Flipkart application, or IRCTC, or any other website, any other website like this, bigbasket.com, right? So you may be using these applications for like from morning 6 to night 11, 10 or 11. Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
So those are called as
Yes,
business
yes.
hours of the application. Those are called as business hours of the application. Okay. Suppose you go to a bank. Let's consider a bank example. So most of the banks in India use an application called, any idea? There is some popular software that was developed by Infosys, our own Infosys Infi. A core banking solution was developed by Infi or Infosys. Some of you might have heard that term. Anyone? Anyone in the batch? Okay. So there is Infosys has developed one core banking solution called Finacle. What is that? Finacle. If you have any friends working in bank, right, ask them like which software they are using. Okay. So most of the banks in India will be using this Finacle software as a core banking solution. You see here, right? Finacle, banking ID and financial software application services. This was developed by Infi. Right? Now, if you take a bank example, bank employee example, will he use the application from morning 6 to 11, evening night 11?
No.
No, right? So bank generally he will be using during the banking hours. Let's say from 9 to 3 or 9 to 4 or 10 to 4. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Right? So those are the business hours of that application. That is where their business will be going on. Now you understood, right? What is going to be business hours of the application?
Yes. Yes.
So based on the number of business hours of the application, we will decide like, what should be the soak test duration. Adi 8 hours undala, 16 hours undala. Based on the business hours of the application, we will decide that. Clear, guys?
Yes. Yes.
So main objective of doing this testing is how the application behaves, like when it is used continuously for like 16 hours or 1 day or 8 hours and so on. 8 hours or 16 hours or 1 day or so on. Right? Continuous go application like if you are using, right, how is the application behavior? Sridhar, there is some background noise from your side. Okay. Anyways, I muted you. So if you have any queries, please unmute yourself. Right? And the main objective is to identify performance bottlenecks like memory leaks and connection leaks. We'll discuss later what is a memory leak and what is a connection leak. For now, what the objective is, the agenda for today's session is to understand what are the different types of performance testing. Okay. So got it right? The second type of performance testing is soak or endurance test. Okay. And it is conducted for longer durations based on business hours of the application. Clear, guys?
Clear. Clear.
Okay. Next, the next type of testing is stress testing. So stress means we know that more than normal, more than something normal, that is called as stress. Yes or no?
Yes.
So stress test is done by gradual increase of user load until the application breaks. We gradually increase the user load on the application until the application breaks. Means until we see like high response times, our site can't be displayed. Right? So we gradually increase the user load. Main purpose of stress testing is to identify an application's breaking point. Breaking point means ఎంత లోడ్ దగ్గర application break అవుతుంది, like at what load the application is started throwing errors or started giving high response times, right? So that is the purpose of doing stress testing. And the response times are so how do we know the application breaking point? Once the breaking point is attained, right, so response times and error count increases. Response times and error count increases once the breaking point is attained. So to find out the application's breaking point, we do this stress testing. And how stress testing is done is by gradual increase of user load. Slowly user load increase chestu, like we test that until the application breaks. Able to understand, guys, or no?
Yes. Yes. Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The next type of testing is
Sir.
spike test. Yes, yes, please. Any queries?
No, sir.
Okay. Now the next type of testing is spike testing. So spike testing is done by sudden increase in user load, right? Spike, the general meaning of spike is sudden increase, isn't it? So spike testing is done by sudden increase in the user load beyond expected load for shorter durations. And I already explained what type of applications require this type of spike testing. What type of applications require this spike testing?
IRTC.
Right. IRCDC application. So, and e-commerce
APS, sir.
applications as well, isn't
Yes,
it?
sir.
Right? Oh, so this is what happens, right? There will be a sudden increase in the user load and it will be for shorter duration. So once the Tatkal window opens, right, there will be a sudden increase in the user load for 10 to 15 minutes. That's it, right? By the time after 10 to 15 minutes, the ticket will be over, or users may not be like, there will, the user load will come to normal, isn't it?
Yes, yes. One doubt here. Is this spike test for sudden expected increase in user load or sudden increase in the user load unexpected?
Sudden increase in the user load, unexpected increase in user load.
Unexpected.
Yes.
Because the in the example we
Beyond expected load. See, I mentioned beyond expected load, more than expected load.
okay, clear.
And spike test can be considered as a subset of stress testing. We'll discuss this also later. Right. The next type of testing is volume testing. So volume testing is done to verify the response times when there is huge volume of data in the database, and it is also referred to as flood testing. Right. So this is to verify the response times of an application when there is huge volume of data in the database. Right. So if you take any banking application or if you take any application, right? So suppose let's consider some banking application. So whenever you do some transactions, some records will be inserted into the database. Yes or no? Whenever you do some fund transfer or a payment and all, one record will be inserted into the database. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? Database lo record add outundi prati transaction, whatever you do. Right? So in that case, like after some time, there will be huge volume of data in the database, right? So when there is less volume, your application may be performing well. But how does the application response time will be when there is huge volume of data in the database, right? To verify that, we do this something called volume testing, and this is also called as flood testing. Okay. So this is done to analyze the system performance by increasing the volume of data in the database. When there are more number of records in the database, how is the application performing? To identify that, we do this volume testing. Volume means volume of data volume. Clear, guys?
Clear, sir.
Next type of testing is scalability testing. Scalability testing means it is to perform to identify if the application is capable to scale up in terms of user load. So what is the capacity of the application? What is the maximum capacity of the application? Or how much can an application scale? To find out that, we do this scalability testing. And failover testing, I already explained. Failover testing is used to verify the system's ability to continue day-to-day operations while the processing part is transferred to a backup environment. So whenever the main environment comes down, how does the backup environment work, right? To identify that, we do this failover testing. Is it clear, guys? Shall we move to the question and answers?
Yes, yes.
The graphs. I'll show you some graphs, right? And you have to identify what type of graph is that.
Yes.
Right. So let me show you, yeah. So first I'll go with this one. What type of test is this? So before let me explain you something. So we all know that, this is called as x-axis, right? This is called as x-axis and this is called as y-axis, isn't it? Yes or no, guys?
Yes, yes.
This horizontal line is called as x-axis and this is called as y-axis. Now on horizontal line, on x-axis we have test time. or test duration of the test. And on y-axis, you have virtual users, means how many users are accessing the application. So that means, see, observe here, this is, so you can see here, user started here and they are, gradually increasing. And from here to here, there is no increase. We are maintaining a steady state from here to here, right? So this is called as ramp up. Ramp up means we are increasing the user load. Okay. And this is called as steady state. And this is called as ramp down, means stopping the users. This is called as ramp down. Now, what type of test does this graph represent?
Load testing.
Load test.
Load test.
Right. So it simply represents a load test because here you can see 1H. 1H means like 1 hour, right? That's what we discussed, right? Load testing will be generally done for 1 to 2 hours. Okay. Now, what type of test is this one?
Spike testing.
Spike test.
Spike testing. Right. So suppose if you assume that this is your normal user load. Let's say this is your normal user load. Okay. Generally, epudu ide user load untundi. But if you observe here, there are 2 spikes here. One small spike here and one big spike here, isn't it? And for a shorter duration, right? It's not for a complete test duration. It's for a shorter duration, isn't it? So that's what we discussed, right? Guys, I can hear that like some people are talking and chatting. Okay. Anyways, so now the next, this graph represents a spike test, isn't it? Now, what type of test is this one? Let me clear this.
Stress.
Right? So why? How can you say that this is stress testing?
It's going up.
Gradually increasing
the
of user load.
Only increasing the
Right. So here, if you see here, we increase the user load and then maintain steady state for some time, and then again increase user load, again steady state, again increase in the user load, and then again steady state. So we are gradually increasing the user load. Right. This is called as stress testing.
Stress
Right?
testing.
Stress test.
Stress test.
Yeah. And what type of test is this one?
Volume testing.
Endurance test.
Endurance test.
Endurance testing, because you see here 5 hours. I just now explained, right? On
Yes.
x-axis we have test duration or elapsed time. Okay. On y-axis you have user load. So, however, you can see here that this is a long duration test of 5 hours. So this graph best represents a yes.
Endurance.
Endurance test.
Endurance.
Soak test.
Soak test.
Soak test or endurance test. Now, what type of test is this one?
Volume test.
Volume test.
Volume test.
Right, perfect. Right. So as because like you
Data
can
quantity
see over here, there is data quantity is represented on y-axis, and x-axis you usually have duration,
Time.
test duration or test time, right? So volume is gradually increasing. If you understand the graph, right? If you look into the graph, so you can see that as per this graph represents a gradual increase in the data volume, because this is on a y-axis data quantity is represented, right? Or the amount of records, number of records in the database. Okay, that is nothing but data quantity. So this graph best represents a volume test.
Volume test.
Right. Okay, I'll stop it here, guys, for today. So let me pause recording. So any queries, guys, before we close the session for the day?